So the tennis world was treated to one of the best tennis matches of all time this weekend in the Australian Open men's final between Daniil Medvedev and Jannik Sinner. And today's video is going to be a little bit different, as I'm going to be breaking down this match and giving you 4 things that you can take away and put into your own game. Now, don't worry if you didn't get to see the match or if you're watching this video later down the line, as I'm going to put all of these 4 points into context. So to set the scene before the final, both players had a very different route to the final. Daniil Medvedev had been on court for over 20 hours as he had 3 matches that went the full 5 sets. Jannik Sinner, on the other hand, was on court for less than 15 hours and he only lost 1 set, which was in the semi-final to world number 1 Novak Djokovic. So hearing this fact alone, you'll probably see that Jannik Sinner had a slight advantage physically. However, this was Daniil Medvedev's 6th Grand Slam final. Jannik hadn't been in a final yet. And before this match, their head-to-head was 6-3 to Medvedev. So when it comes to experience, Medvedev had the slight advantage. Now, I'm sure you know, if you've watched Daniil Medvedev before, he's known for his incredible defensive skills and his problem solving. He's one of the best tacticians in the world, and so is known for performing very well over 5 sets, as he always has a plan B. Jannik Sinner, on the other hand, is a very aggressive player. He takes the ball much earlier and hits the ball much harder generally. In fact, when you look at the stats from previous rounds, you'll see that Jannik Sinner was winning most of his points from the shorter rallies from 0 to 4 and from 5 to 8 shots, whereas Daniil Medvedev had a better ratio on the longer rallies, which were 9 shots plus. These stats go hand in hand with what you would expect, Daniil being more of a defensive player and Jannik being more of an attacking player. However, in the final, things panned out very differently. Daniil Medvedev stepped on court in a far more aggressive way. He was stepping much tighter to the baseline when he was hitting his ground strokes and returns, and even coming into the net to try to keep the rally short. Now, this was probably for 2 reasons. One, he wanted to keep the rally short, as he knew that his legs probably wouldn't be able to take longer rallies after being on court for 20 hours already. And number 2, he was probably banking on Jannik Sinner being slightly nervous with it being his first Grand Slam final. And so by being aggressive, it stopped Jannik from gaining any rhythm and any confidence. Now, for the first set and the majority of the second set, this worked extremely well for Daniil Medvedev. Jannik didn't look to be involved in the match at all. Daniil was dominating and Jannik was finding it really tough to get involved in the match. But in the second set, when Daniil was 5-1 up and serving for the set, Jannik had a good spell of a few points and managed to break Daniil Medvedev back. He then managed to hold his own serve before Daniil managed to hold to win the set. Now, although he lost that set 6-3, managing to break Daniil's serve gave him a massive boost in confidence and the belief that he was actually still in this match. One interesting stat from the first 2 sets when Daniil was playing super aggressively was that Jannik Sinner's contact point on average was 13 centimeters lower than it had been for his previous rounds. What this meant for Jannik was it was much harder for him to play aggressively. Because his contact point was lower, he had to get the ball up and over the net, meaning that he had to hit with more shape. And so the way that Daniil was playing was really stopping Jannik from being able to attack. However, once the 3rd set had started, Jannik was starting to find his groove. He was building in confidence game on game and started to play more and more aggressively. And during that 3rd set, you slowly started to see Daniil Medvedev move further back into the way that he's used to playing, sitting further behind the baseline and more defensively. Now, what was really interesting was that Jannik Sinner was trying to make the rallies go on longer and longer, which is usually going to help Daniil Medvedev. However, he was aware that Medvedev's legs were probably not going to take it much longer, so he wanted to be on court for as long as possible, making it tougher for Daniil and giving him more time to get into his own groove. Now, this was not to say that Jannik wasn't being aggressive, but he was just being smarter with his choices, and he was building the point really well until he had a much easier ball to attack from. Now, this then worked for the next 2 sets. Jannik won the 3rd set and the 4th set, and by the 5th set, you could slowly see Daniil starting to tire. Now, this guy is a physical and mental machine because it was only a very subtle change, but what that change meant was that he was playing slightly more defensively, hitting that ball with a little bit more height over the net, giving Jannik more time and more height to attack. Now, in the 3rd, 4th and 5th set, Jannik only broke Daniil once, so these sets could have very easily gone the other way. What Jannik managed to do was win the points at the crucial times. He faced a couple of break points in those sets, but managed to hit an unreturnable serve each time. Finally, winning that final set 6-3 and claiming his first Grand Slam title. And in my opinion, that's going to be his first of many. So, onto the 4 points that I think that you can take from this match. The first important takeaway is it's not always about how many points you win, but when you win them. When you look back at the stats from this match, we already know how close it was, but what is crazy is how many points these players won. Daniil Medvedev won 141 and Jannik Sinner won 142. There was 1 point between the two of them. And what's even more crazy is if you look back at Daniil Medvedev's semi-final when he beat Sasha Zverev in 5 sets, he actually won less points than Zverev to win the match. So it really goes to show how fine these margins are. And one thing that match winners all have in common is they win more of the points towards the end of the match. So when it comes to your matches and your training, it's really important to bear this in mind. You want to be trying to play your best tennis towards the end of the match, not just at the start. So you may need to consider physical training. Are you feeling fatigued and tired towards the end of matches? If so, that's not going to help you to win. So you need to be physically ready to play your best at the end. But equally, are you mentally able to play well at the end? Lots of people get tight when closing out matches. So if this is you, this is something that you definitely need to work on. The reason Jannik was able to play his best tennis at the end of the match was for 3 reasons. Number 1, he was feeling physically better than Daniil Medvedev, mainly due to the amount of time he'd spent on court beforehand. Number 2, he shook off his nerves that he had at the start and felt his groove through the match. And number 3, which is a really valuable one, is he gained information as the match went on. And that's what you can do as well. Next time you're playing a tennis match, regardless if you win or lose the first set, try to gather as much information from that set as possible to help you to play better tennis in the second and maybe the third set as well. That information could be, where is your opponent spilling mistakes? Are they making more mistakes on their backhand side? Are they hitting shorter when it goes to their backhand? Are they using a certain pattern of play that you can execute against them? But the more information you have towards the end of the match, the more it can help you. The second thing that you need to take from this match is that one game style is not enough. You need to have a plan B, and both of these players in this match did. At the start, you saw that Daniil Medvedev played in a very different game style to what he's used to. If he had played in his normal defensive way, I honestly think that Jannik would have won it in straight sets. It would have given Jannik too many opportunities to attack and to build his confidence. So Medvedev was super smart playing in a different way. On the flip side of this, Jannik was unable to play his usual attacking game style. This could have been down to a few nerves at the start, or just the fact that Daniil was playing too aggressively. But Jannik changed the way that he played, made the rallies last longer, allowing him to gain rhythm and Daniil to get tired. And so if you have a favorite way to play, whether you're an aggressive baseliner or a serve and volleyer, it's always important to have another style of play as well, just as a backup in case that plan doesn't work. The third thing that you can take from this match is that you should try to step into your opponent's shoes more often. What I mean by this is when we're playing, lots of us tend to focus mainly on ourselves and our own game. Now this is good to an extent, but it's always important to make sure that you have an eye on how your opponent's feeling at the other end. An example of this was Jannik knew that Medvedev was tired. He actually had this information from before the match, so this allowed him to focus a little bit less on himself and how tired he felt, and focus more on tiring Daniil out at the other end. Sometimes in matches we can feel exhausted ourselves and be focusing so much on how badly we feel that we're unaware that our opponent actually feels even more tired than we do. So put yourself in your opponent's shoes. Try to figure out when they're going to be feeling their most nervous, and when they do, that's your opportunity to come in and attack. Figure out if they're feeling vulnerable on a certain wing. Has your opponent been struggling on the slower balls? Because let's face it, those slower balls are not as easy as some of the fast ones. So tip number 3 is to try to be more aware of how your opponent's feeling. And the final point is with regards to pressure. In one of Jannik's post-match interviews, he was talking about pressure and how he actually really enjoys being in those pressured moments, as he says that pressure is a privilege.
There is always pressure, but the pressure is something good. You have to take it in a good way. It's a privilege, no? So yes, I like to dance in the pressure storm. I don't know how to tell. Me personally, I like it because that's where most of the time I bring out my best tennis.
Now, the way we feel pressure and the way we deal with pressure is actually a choice. Pressure is created in situations where something means a lot to you. And the best pros actually play their best tennis when they're under pressure, whereas lots of players that I know play their worst tennis when they're under pressure. And one thing that you can do to train this is to try to put yourself in a pressured environment more often. This can help you to understand the feeling of pressure when it comes and how to deal with it better. Now, you can put yourself under pressure by playing more matches, by playing more tight matches. You can change the scoring format and play handicap scoring, or you can even put something on the line when you're training. But the more you can expose yourself to pressure on the tennis court, the more used to it you'll become. And who knows, you may even start enjoying it like Jannik. So I'm not sure how this video is going to go down, as I've not done this format of video before, but let me know if you liked it. Hit that thumbs up button if you did. And I'd also like to know in the comments, if you watched the match, what you thought of it. Thanks as always for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care.